What you appreciate appreciates. And that's a quote by Ben Skemper. Hello and welcome to the 2023 interview series. I'm Sabrina Schottenhamel, and today I have with me Dave LoSavio. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you for having me on your interview, Sabrina. I am delighted to be here. It is a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience and then we'll get started.
Wonderful. So I'm Dave LoSavio. I am a residential real estate broker at the suburban team of Mark Allen Realty in Arlington Heights, Illinois. I'm also a keynote speaker where I share 3 small shifts with my audience that'll create more abundance and health, wealth, and happiness. And I'm also a personal coach. I live in downtown Arlington Heights, and I'm enjoying 2023 as it's been a very abundant year so far.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell the audience, how did we meet?
How did we meet? We met at Engaging Speakers.
Yes.
I don't know exactly when. It was in the last 2 years. I believe that you were already a member, a card-carrying member. And from there, somehow we either sat next to each other or we started talking. And I think the polarity between us, whether it was introvert, extrovert, masculine, feminine, something seemed to work and dance. So we got along really well. And then I remember having you on my live stream, Live Beyond Default, which was super cool that you came on. So I think we met very organically and we met for a reason.
Oh, I totally believe that too. Yeah, I remember, I don't know exactly when it was, but it was towards the end of last year, maybe like September, October, because I remember you were talking, I believe at the end of the Engaging Speakers meeting when we do gratitude. And you mentioned something about your planning for 2023 back in September. Yeah.
We call that September's the new January.
Okay.
That's what we call that.
Yep. Yeah. And there was a few people that were giving you shout outs for that. And so I went up to you and I was like, hey, I'd love to connect with you. And we exchanged information. And then a few months later, you had me on your podcast. So why don't you talk a little bit about your podcast?
I appreciate you asking that. That's a super fun thing for me. Sometimes my podcast is therapy. Sometimes for me, sometimes it's a way for me it's always a way for me to share what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I've implemented. And most importantly, it's a community for people to get together and challenge themselves to what I call live beyond default. And that's choosing a life of design versus accepting a life of neglect. It's essentially making 5-year-old you and 105-year-old you proud. And it's challenging yourself to play big. I grew up on talk radio with my dad. So I always have this affinity for live talk shows. And then I did live radio for 2 years, hence the radio face. I did live radio for 2 years, and that's where I was trained and I learned. And then I did a podcast also for 2 years in 2010 to 2012 when most people weren't doing one. And then circling back to now, I decided to start one again because I just enjoyed it so much. And I thought that there was a good space for me to provide content. And now I'm on my 47th episode this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's interesting that you grew up with talk radio because my dad and my mom always listened to talk radio, like Johnny B and Kevin Matthews. So I always had talk radio on, and my parents still love listening to talk podcasts and recordings and things like that. So we have that in our background as a similarity as well, Dave.
Those are great names too that you mentioned. So here's the cool thing about radio. Radio is what we call a cool medium. So a hot medium would be like TV or watching a video. The sound and the visual is all there. So your brain doesn't really decipher and doesn't figure out anything and apply anything in a hot medium. You're told what to do and what to think. What I like about talk radio is you only hear it. So your brain and your mind puts together the images that you want to, and it applies to everybody super differently just because the brain has to fill in that gap. So that's something that I love about that talk medium. And to give you an example, there's a TV show called 60 Minutes that's been on forever. Mm-hmm. On, I guess, Channel 2 or something on Sunday nights. Well, they also used to broadcast that on a Chicago station called News Radio 780. Live at the same time it was being broadcast on television. And if you listen to 60 Minutes on the radio versus watching it on television, it's a completely different experience. And that's part of what I love about talk radio. And I've had people come to me say, you know, it's interesting when I listen to your show, I don't need to watch it because I understand what you're saying just by listening to it. And I said, yeah, there's a reason for that because I was trained and my love is for talk radio. So I actually get that feedback from people.
That's interesting. And so it relates to me listening to audiobooks in the car. I'm not a person that sits down and actually reads because I've never been able to retain the information I'm reading. So when I'm driving and listening, for some reason, I'm able to take in the information a little bit better.
Yes.
So yeah, it's interesting. And of course, I'm in the car quite a bit. So that does give me time to read or learn instead of being frustrated by not being able to sit down and read. So so that's really cool that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing for me. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So Dave, tell me a couple of your passions.
Passion to me is something that when you don't feel like doing something, it keeps you to fill in that gap and gives you that energy and that motivation to move forward. So what am I passionate about? Well, I'm really passionate about, of course, personal growth and personal development, becoming better for you than becoming better than you. Very important to me. Really showing up the best that I can with my routines on a daily basis. So then I can go out and serve the marketplace, my clients, my friends, my family, Schaumburg Business Association, engaging speakers. I like reading. I like yoga. I like rock climbing. Maybe those are passions. I really like sitting down face to face with people and learning and listening to understand what drives them, what gets them to wake up in the morning, what frustrates them, and what they are doing and taking responsibility for in their lives so they may become just a little bit better.
That's really cool. And when you were talking about that, it sparked my interest on LinkedIn, how you post about the cool people in your life. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that got started?
Yeah. The history of LinkedIn with me is that Gary V would always say, pick a social media platform, study it for 30 hours, learn it, and then start creating content for it. So I chose to do that with LinkedIn. And once I started doing that, I started feeding the algorithm and I started getting more reactions, more impressions, but more importantly, more engagement from people. And not for the sense of me getting a dopamine hit, although it is flattering when people comment. I think it's important to always show up with value and bring value and make it about the person reading it. What's in it for me? Not what's in it for me, what's in it for the person who's reading or looking or watching the vid. So what you're talking about specifically is what I call collaborating with cool people. So I came up with that term because people would always ask me, they're like, well, even like you asked me, what's my passion? What do you want to do in this life? And I would always say to people, you know what? I just want to hang out with cool people. Like that's literally all I want to do, which in turn means creating businesses with them, creating wealth with them, doing things, of course, not sitting around all day, although sitting around with people is part of it. So then I changed hanging out with cool people to collaborating, because hanging out gives the connotation of not really doing anything after a while.
Mhm.
Connecting, I feel like we're connecting with people all the time, but are we actually taking the next step with them? And connection gets you there. I then feel that collaborating and co-creating is really something more powerful and on a higher level of consciousness that that shows a lot of respect and integrity for that other person. So I created what's called collaborating with cool people. When I'm with someone, we'll take a picture, we'll put that caption on there, put their name, and then I'll post it. And I'll give 1 or 2 reasons why I like collaborating with that person.
That's cool. I like that. Nice. And Dave, how did you get into your line of work? Because you're a coach, you're a realtor. How did you get into them, and how are they working well together?
I don't have television, and I haven't had it for years, maybe 6 years, and I don't have any news feeds. So when COVID, before lockdown, I heard about lockdown by a restaurant that I was at, by a couple other people I was around. I didn't hear it from any news source, right? I always feel like if something's newsworthy, it'll get to me. If it's meant to get to me, it'll get to me, right? And that was another example. So COVID hits the week before my birthday, the week before my 50th birthday, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I guess there's this lockdown thing and I'm not going to do anything for my birthday. Okay, cool. So COVID was a very transformative time for me. It was a very self-reflective time for me. And a week later, this Deepak Chopra 21-day abundance challenge showed up in my text feed from a woman named Radka. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to give it a try. And then after 5 days, you share it with other people. Wow. 2 weeks later, she sends me something else, which is Wim Hof breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of this guy, but I don't know what it is, right? So now I'm sitting in my loft in downtown Arlington Heights, doing the 21-day Deepak Chopra challenge, doing the Wim Hof abundance challenge, not watching any news, not really making sales calls. I was doing B2B selling packaging. So like boxes, right? That's what I was selling, boxes and tape and stretch wrap. And I was also reading this book called The Alchemist. And in this
I
book,
read that.
yeah. So this kid is traveling, trying to find his purpose or his North Star, or they called it, I don't remember what they called it, but they called it something. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, you know what? I'm this kid. I am this kid on this journey, trying to find my purpose, my North Star. And I don't like selling boxes anymore. I don't think I liked selling boxes for a while, but it's time for me to make a move. So what I decided was I didn't want to work 7 to 5 Monday to Friday. I wanted to create wealth and earn a living on my time in 168 hours a week, not by this gun that tells me you have to start at this time and stop at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be more personal and less transactional in my sales and what I was doing. And I wanted to work with my buddy because I saw all my entrepreneur friends. Most of the people I collaborate with are 25 to maybe 35 or 36. They're considerably younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself a millennial in a Gen X body. And they were all creating businesses together. Well, my buddy Joe just happened to be doing real estate for the last 7 years. Now, if he was doing electric cars, I'd probably be in electric cars right now.
Mm-hmm.
But he happened to be doing real estate. So August 7th, 2020, my close and dear friend Stephanie said, I was talking about leaving my industry and my career, and I kept pushing out the date. And she looked at me and said, you know, you keep pushing out the date and coming back. She goes, you need to quit right now. She goes, what you're going to do is you're going to jump out of a plane without a parachute and recognize and trust that before you hit the ground and go splat, you're going to sew up a parachute and you're going to fly away. And within a couple seconds, I said, you know what? That makes sense. I think I could do this. So August 7th, 2020, right in the middle of COVID, I decided that October 30th, 2020 would be my last day. And 2 weeks before I'd give my 2 weeks notice, which I did. It was not the great resignation. I had my great realization, not resignation, great realization in the middle of 2020 when most people didn't quit at that time. And I was making more money than ever. In fact, 2020, I had my 2 highest months. October 2020, my last month, I had my biggest month ever in my career. I still left. And there my real estate journey began. And once that began, a couple months into it, I realized how much I loved real estate. Then people started coming to me for me to speak about the personal daily habits that I do. And then they came to me and wanted me to coach them in sales and their personal habits. So real estate just opened up these other areas. I like to say that real estate's my new love and public speaking is my old love that I'm back together with. So I'm really living a life of abundance, opportunity, and I'm aligned and I'm congruent with what I love to do. I'm thinking, I'm speaking, and I'm acting all in alignment with my values. And I just absolutely love it. So I know COVID was a tough time for a lot of people. For me, it was an amazing, wonderful self-reflection, relaxing, tough time to walk away from all the money that I was making. And I did it. I made the move. And that's where Live Beyond Default comes from.
Okay.
So that's my short answer.
Yeah. Well, and that overlaps with the passions because you're super passionate about what you do and who you share it to.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think you said something about getting up every day. Like what wakes you up every day? What gets you out of bed? It's these things. That's what gets Dave out of bed every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was drew me to you, because I could see that you have drive and I have a really good solid morning routine that I stick with and I speak about as well now. And being an introvert 10 years ago, I would not want to speak in front of people. Now I love it. But because I've developed my skills as an introverted leader and opposite of you love to speak in front of people and you always have. And it's just a newfound passion of yours.
Yeah.
Or re-sparked maybe.
Re-sparked.
That's a better way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. And You know what I think is important? It's my opinion that we see so much on social media about the wins. And I
Mhm.
do my best not to post about, not to create content, is just to document what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I'm doing on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And it's really hard. Like this journey of self-development and self-improvement, not that anything's broken, just becoming better. Um, it's hard. It's not fun.
Mhm.
And I think there's a idea that, oh, it's all great, it's easy for you, and look at who you're hanging out with. No, it's not. It's really a grind. It's really doing things you don't feel like doing for the greater good. And it takes a lot of discipline. And the rewards are not short-term dopamine hits, it's long-term happiness. It's like, it's almost like a constant state of like flow. Um, so, getting into this development realm starts where it's like, oh, cool, like we're gonna like better ourselves. And then you get into it a month later and you're like, shit, this is really hard. And this
Yeah.
is not fun. And I kind of don't feel like doing this. Um, and that's why most people don't do it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So Dave, what is one thing that you are super grateful for right this moment?
I am grateful for my crew. And I like to call crew, my needs are their needs
Mhm.
and their needs are my needs. So I'm really grateful for the people that I have around me in my life to be supportive when I need it and listen, to challenge me when I'm playing small, and to be around when it's time to have fun with purpose and just goof off and be kids. I love co-creating businesses, events, opportunities, relationships, wealth. It's just fun to do it with people that you're friends with.
Mhm.
And I never, like, I knew it was out there, but I just didn't, because I think a lot of my generation and other generations were sold like, you got to go to school and then you go get this job and you got to work this time and they get a house. We were sold this such a structured system that self-trust and that discipline and that focus and the courage to actually to jump out of that plane. And once I did, it just, everything is so much easier. It takes less effort. I produce more, and I just really love what I do.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that smile, when you talk about that, you're like, oh yeah, it just brings your heart to life when you can do what you love to do. You don't have to stay in the parameters of what we're supposed to be, right?
Yep.
And I remember when I was a senior in high school and I was thinking about college, and I grew up in Hinsdale. And so the thing to do was you go to high school and then you go away to college, because we have, it was a good school district and everyone else went away to college, but I did not want to go away to college.
Yeah.
So instead of going away to college, I had a conversation with my mom and expressed how I felt. She knew how I felt, of course, because she was my mom. And I was able to go to massage school as my college instead of going away. And I could live at home and work, and it was so much better for me. So I'm glad that you said that, because we don't have to live in what we should be doing in this world. We can, if we are entrepreneurial in spirit, we can go off and do whatever we want. Well, thank you so much for this interview. I just have a wonderful time with you every time I see you, and especially in person, to get those hugs from you. And one
Yeah.
more thing, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't even know. How do you get a hold of me? Well, it's really easy to get a hold of me if you just Google Dave LoSavio. I'm not going to give you a number. I'm not going to give you an email because it's all over the place. If you just Google Dave, LoSavio, all my contact information is transparent everywhere. I hide nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it okay if I put your LinkedIn profile in this video?
That's the best one because
Okay.
that's the one I jam on the most regularly.
Okay, then I will do that.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again, Dave.
You're the best, Sabrina. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.